Okay. Welcome, everyone. We are here at Enhancing Disciplinary Literacy, AI's Role in Humanities Education. That's a mouthful, isn't it? To be able to say that. So when they did ask me to come up with some like a topic with humanities, I'm like, did you realize how big humanities is? So just breaking that down is going to be it'll be interesting within an hour. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land in which I live and work. Normally, it's in Novi, Michigan, but I wrote this when I was in Novi, Michigan. I did not realize I would be flying over to California. So pretend I'm in Novi, Michigan as I say this. But this area is the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary land of the Anishinaabe peoples. The Ottawa, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Potawatomi nations who are part of the Three Fires Confederacy. I also want to recognize Michigan's 12 federally recognized Native nations, the historic Indigenous communities of this region, and Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now. In offering this acknowledgement, we honor the resilience, history, and contributions of Indigenous peoples, and we affirm their sovereignty, presence, and connection to this land, past, present, and future. If you are comfortable, please share in the chat where you are joining us from today so we can all recognize and honor the diverse lands that bring us together in this space. Thank you. So I'd like to, hi, Katie. Hey, Julie, welcome. And I've had a little chat with Katie already, which was nice. Thank you, Katie, for taking time and jumping in and just letting me find some like peace and just being able to, as I came in from rush hour traffic. So I appreciate you for that. My name is Myla, and like I said, I live in Michigan, so I understand the cold, that big cold front that came through. I've been an educator for over 30 plus years. So I officially retired, but I'm probably almost as busy because of some of the work I've done. I would spend a lot of time in the classroom, but then I ended up becoming a project-based learning specialist within my own district space and now an instructional coach. I wear several hats, and one of them is being an independent consultant. And so I just couldn't leave this world where I can work with teachers and students and sometimes leaders to just help them grow in whatever topic or learning that they need. So that's me in a nutshell. And so what I'd like to do is continue on, but also later on give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. What I'm going to expect is that we're going to be posing questions, and I'm going to encourage you to engage in a couple of things. I know that, sometimes the screens are off, and rightly so, it's getting towards the evening. But the way you can show is to interact like you're already doing in the chat. I do love friendly faces. So Katie, I love seeing your face. So if you keep that going, I'll be a happy camper, but I understand if you have to take off. Open dialogue, this is really designed for you to share your curiosity if you have questions, and collaborative learning. I am not the expert. I always say, I know what I know because I surround myself with really smart people, or I've gotten to the habit of learning from my mistakes. And so I've made lots of mistakes. So I'm just letting you know that we're going to take the wisdom of the room and help us to be better learners. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd like you to use the chat, and I have the gifted and talented. You've already introduced yourself in the chat. So I really appreciate that. But another question I want to pose to you is, when you think about AI, what's one area of your work you hope it can improve? Julie said, I hope it can help. Let me see. Give me creative lessons, activities for students. I want them to understand how it works as well. That's wonderful, Julie. Julie, what is your current role? That's the question I want. And oh, you're a teacher. You're an amazing teacher. Thank you for being here. And let me see, Katie, AI is a great support for the new teacher induction programs that I coordinate for my board. Absolutely. I know that it's a valuable tool for new teachers as they struggle to generate new lesson plans and rubrics. I'm glad you know that and you're here, Katie. And then Julie said, I'm a teacher and department head. Welcome. So thank you so much. And I always, one time I had a teacher actually put down, I'm just a teacher. And I actually had to stop that person and say, you are not just a teacher. You are, think about the roles you play. So I'm glad I didn't have any, I'm just a teachers in the chat. So I'm going to move forward. And like I said, I'm using the chat as a back channel. So if you have questions, and here's the thing, I said I'm not the expert here. So if there's a question in there and one of you can answer it, I say go for it. Okay. So let's frame our time together. Okay. I consider all of you lead learners, even though you are in education where you are being the teachers. I appreciate you being here and spending the time with us. Now, the one thing I want to point out is as we move forward into this, we're going to look at our agenda and we're going to think about these different things. We're going to break this down. We're going to, for those who, I always do a quick review of generative AI, regardless of who's in the room. Sometimes I might go faster if I have people who have been really diving into it. I like to introduce what is prompt engineering because we've heard this term of AI used so much in terms of AI this, AI that. Sometimes there's a sense of fear that comes with this. Sometimes people approach it with a sense like it's a very asset-based approach. But I want to introduce that so we all have common language. Then the intersection of this whole idea of generative AI and humanities. Now, let's keep I was telling Katie before we officially started the recording that when I was asked to see if I could come up with something with humanities, I'm like, humanities, that is such a big topic. So hopefully you read the description and it can serve a purpose. And my whole thing is, regardless of whatever my webinars are, I really hope that it just makes you curious, and that you walk away with one gold nugget. And then one other thing is after we're going to do a little prompt challenge. And I'm going to tell you with the prompts, I like it because it really helps me as well see how people will use it and how they interact with it. Now, and then we'll end it with a closing reflection. Before we move forward, I know if you've been on your computer most of the day or haven't gone through it, you have tons of tabs open. And if that's the case, I want you to use this opportunity to do you remember Marie Kondo during the pandemic? She told us to clean out our closet, okay, and to find joy, but she changed her story because she has kids now, okay? So that's what I found out. But here's the deal. When I'm going to ask you right now to Marie Kondo your tabs. Find out really, so it's not a distraction, but then leave one tab out. So if you use Chat GPT, if you use Gemini, or if you use any of the different types of platforms for AI, I want you to have one of them up so you're ready and good to go. Okay. And if you don't have one up, that's okay. You might want to get one set up before we get to that point. Any questions? And feel free, we are a cozy group. Strong-minded women that are a cozy group. So what we can do is if you feel like, you know what, I just need to say it instead of type it out and try to find the chat button, unmute and just talk, okay? So let's talk about our norms and etiquette. Like I said, I'd really like you to be present and try things out. I'd like you to share some ideas and mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If possible, turn your camera on, but I also told you it's okay. Katie's going to show her facial expressions for all of us. Right, Katie? Right. No, you're awesome. Another thing I want to talk about, it's just a little disclaimer. We say this because, we are going to introduce different tools, and it may or may not be approved by your local board, but it's just used to demonstrate. Maureen is giving you a shout out, Katie. It's to demonstrate how the processes and techniques. So before you say, oh, I have to use this tool, just make sure it's okay, that it's actually approved for you. So our handy dandy agenda, introduction to generative AI. I almost feel like there should be like a dum after that. Okay, so I want to find out where you're at, your experience, kind of like formatively assess. Just put it in the chat. If you're 1, that means you're brand new and you have not really used AI before. You've heard of it and you're curious. If you're a 2, I've tried AI a few times and I'm still figuring things out. If you're a 3, I use AI regularly and I feel comfortable with the basic features. And number 4, I'm well versed in AI and I routinely use it. I could teach others. That means you can teach others pretty much how to prompt engineer. Oh, I love it, Maureen. 3.5, Julie's a 2 and a 2 and an 8, 3 and a 3, and then Katie 4 with lots still to learn. I love it. So if you are towards that 3 and 4, some of the prompts later on, you might say, oh, Mila, I can go more with this. And you know what I'm going to say? Go for it. Because this, like I said, we can learn from each other. So keeping that in mind, and like I said, back channel, if there are things that you want to add to the learning and add to, okay, this is some simplistic information, please feel free to either put it in the chat, or if I asked if there's any comments, feel free to unmute and share your thoughts. When we think about generative AI, people think it just came up. It's been a while, it's been around, but it's looked a little different. So when we think about like in terms of it being reactive, we think about like Google, like think about Google Maps. It reacts to specific inputs. It's actually based on like a set of rules or conditions. It doesn't have any memory. So it's what you needed for that moment. And then we have the predictable, where it's like where you have like something like Netflix. There's a lot of analysis or on the data and how you use it to make predictions or recommendations about future events or behaviors. We have Netflix. My kids and my husband hate it when I go on their I guess their channel or their account by accident. Why is because, and I'm like, how did you know? And they're saying they're recommending all these Hallmark movies, Mom. We don't watch that. Okay. And so I bet, so because Netflix has already it's analyzed the data that I have and said, here's a recommendation for you. Okay. And then the other piece, this is the one that we're interacting with now, is it creates the difference with AI versus what the other forms we have is that it creates new content. It actually based everything on patterns. It's learned from large data sets and it generates these outputs that didn't exist before. So that is exciting. How many of you feel like that's exciting? But for some people, they hold back and go, whoa, they're actually creating things that weren't there before. Any thoughts on that? Because I have like 2, 3, 4s. I have like the gifted and talented group here. Okay. Any thoughts on just that thought in terms of the idea that it's creating something that wasn't there before? You don't have to share it. I just totally believe in wait time and letting you process these things. Okay. So because you're 3s and 4s, I'm just going to go through this quick, but I also keep in mind that this is being recorded and I might have some ones and twos watching this. So when you talk about what is generative AI, it refers to the form of that artificial intelligence that focuses on creating content, text, and this image that I had here is actually created from that. What I need to do is actually make a reference to it before I turn in the slides, but it was created by ChatGPT, okay? And it's learning patterns from like the large databases that we have and data sets. There's a couple ways I've seen it referred to. I like this one because it just looks funny. You know, if you think, you imagine you have a digital chef in your kitchen and who can make any dish you want. You just tell that chef what you're in the mood for, and they whip it up using recipes they've learned and mixed with some creativity. Now, sometimes, and we've seen this, if you've actually tinkered with AI, the chef, I don't give all the ingredients necessary. And sometimes it doesn't know the pattern. It doesn't know what I need right away. And so it might not make the dish completely. And I have to say, and go back and say, you know what, that's really not the dish. I need to make it better. How many of you have had that happen? Thanks, Maureen. But I've also heard it used this way for some of my friends here. I've had people refer to it, a colleague refers to it as a junior partner, because you're teaching your junior partner. That junior partner or an intern is an eager beaver. I want to learn. Let me get it for you. How many of you have had an intern or someone work with you there? I want to learn. Let me help you. But sometimes they're so eager and they didn't listen to all the directions, or I didn't give enough info and they didn't have enough background knowledge. Okay. Either way, but when I refer to it as a junior partner, I've seen a difference with how teachers will actually, when they write their prompts, write it as if there is more of a human component to it in terms of saying please and thank you and not making assumptions that this computer knows everything, knows a lot, but that's why it really can never replace you. So again, I keep saying it's large data sets, but it's mimicking these patterns. And I keep saying that for the simple reason that when I do a literacy course, I actually talked with teachers who work with younger kids. I've said, you know, when young kids are developmentally learning, like they're reading and writing and even math, they have to have a sense of number and a sense of looking for patterns to make sense, to make those words come to life. And that's why I'm trying to make that clear, because as teachers work with students and other folks, we want to make sure that they understand that this is based on pattern and the information that's out there. So there are things that we need to consider when we receive the outputs. Now, when we think about AI, I always like to think about how it benefits teachers and students. You know, if you look at my little images there, I always like that one where the teacher looks so excited, you know. You can tell it's not the end of a long day. It's probably the beginning of one. But automatic grading, you know, Katie, you mentioned for new teachers, you know, some of these things that if you were in education, Katie, I think you said, I think we're around the same age, many years in education, those were things that took a lot of time and took a lot of toll on us as teachers. But now AI can do those things. Like it generates a lesson plan. Think about how long, if you were sick and you had a substitute, sometimes we came in sick because it was worse to try to write up the lesson plans for a sub. Do you remember that? How many of you have ever experienced that? I would rather, you know, it's more work to be absent, right? Or professional learning. You know, there are courses that are AI generated that can be responsive, but it also gives you that feedback, you know, the chat on the side, how may I help you? And administrative tasks. Those are the things maybe for you, Katie, you know, as working with the board and new teachers, it provides that. It gives you those tasks that would take up a lot of time. It could do that automatically. Now, when you think about our students, how could it help them? Personalized learning. Yeah. If you think of some of the online tech tools that are out there, they have it so when I think of some tools where it will adjust the reading level so students could have access to that. Learning accessibility. How can things that weren't available for our students because of a disability or a challenge or a barrier are there now? And one thing I really appreciate as a mom of teenagers, like 24/7 learning support. Yes. Thank you, Katie. I love that. She said, an equity leveler for our students who may not have parents or guardians who understand English or are working at night. Thank you for bringing that into our learning. The other thing is instant feedback. That means, like, to your point, Katie, mom and dad may be working and they need help to say, hey, is this correct? It's going to be instant feedback, but even the AI component for some programs have made it so it will show them how the process of what mistakes they made and how they can be better. And that whole interactive learning where there's a piece of meeting students, analyzing the data that's been there from what the students have been providing in terms of their learning, and then adjusting it so it meets their needs. Okay. Is there any way I have these wonderful educators right now in this room Zoom room with me? Any other way that you might have used it in your classroom or in your role? Let me see. So I'm going to move, but if you decide to add anything, friends, feel free to, because I know sometimes we speak faster than we type. Okay. I know I do. So when we think about that, and I'm sure as these are things as educators we think about. Oh, thank you, Maureen. Process instead of final product. Love that. Teacher modeling. Maureen, I'm wanting to see what grade level. Oh, what grade level do you teach, Maureen? So when we think about the risks, thank you, Maureen. We think about data privacy and security. They gather sensitive information. That's something that we need to consider when we're inputting things within AI, that we don't provide confidential information, names, especially when it comes to students. And then the potential bias in an AI output. It can actually replicate cultural biases, actually harming equity and accuracy in student learning. So those are the risks. And that plays a bigger role for us as educators because we need to, as students might have access and may not have what we have to kind of as a guardrail for them. And, sometimes students can get access and find these things. We need to be able to teach them what to critically think and think about the information that's being outputted. That's where our role plays a big part in that. And so when we talk about responsibilities, we talk about protecting student information, but then also guarding against bias. And that, yeah, thank you, Maureen. And that is really where we need to, we really need our role as teachers. And I say this to teachers a lot, friends, because some teachers will say, AI is going to replace me. Well, because of these risks, we need teachers more to understand AI so they can teach students the importance of really thinking about the outputs and really looking through the eyes of, is this information truth? If not, how can I figure that out? Okay, I just had a conversation with a teacher today because she was like, well, This is it. I had one teacher who actually uses outputs of AI and she passes it out to students. And she asks students to decide whether or not it is AI generated or not, or whether or not the information is valid. And so they have to defute it. I thought that was quite interesting that she did it that way. So I asked this question before, I planted that, but now I'm going to ask you to see if you can put it in the chat. Share your experience if you've used it, okay? If not, what type of AI generated content would you find most useful? I know Katie mentioned about lesson plans and trying to teach those things for her new teachers, and that's such a gift. But what other things would you want to, AI generated that would help you out a ton with your role? I love the back channel, friends. Again, I'm working with the gifted and talented women here. That's wonderful, Katie. Have you done that with your students? Or wonderful, wonderful. I'm gonna put a big old smiley face on that one. Anyone else? Let's see. Oh, Julie's like, oh, come on, Katie, tell me about chat boxes. So we might have a mini lesson here happening real soon. Awesome. This is awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome. Yeah. I think the individual feedback, yeah, I have 2 other webinars in the following weeks that will I think address some of these too, but we can touch on it because I have all of you, your 3s and 4s. We can pull from each other on this one. Love it. Oh, look at that. Katie said brisk is great for this too. I have to look at that. I think someone shared that with me. Okay. Thank you. Continue having these conversations. This is what it's all about. It's not really about me. It's all about you learning from each other and me just facilitating this. Into prompt engineering. So I know, Katie, you said you're pretty much a 4 in that, but still learning. Love it. And we have a 3.5 in the room. Wonderful. And so I'm going to introduce a little bit about the prompt engineering for the recorded version, but then when we get to the prompt challenge, I might differentiate a little bit more on that. Okay. So when we talk about prompt engineering, why prompting skills matter, there's such a flood of new applications out there, and there's a new one every day. And if you've ever just started looking through it, there's a new one that it's moving so fast. And so the output quality depends on the input, and great prompts lead to great results. And so prompting saves time and it actually reduces errors in your work. Now, keeping that in mind, what I love about knowing how to create a prompt is that it requires some mathematical thinking and on your part, but also allows it to be very personalized to your needs. Because sometimes you have some applications out there, but it's just not hitting the mark. Have you noticed that, Katie, with some of the things that you've done, or played around with? Okay. So the art of writing effective prompts. Context is key. Okay. Context is key. So when you think about when you write a prompt, you want to make sure that there's the right context in it and provide as much relevant context as possible. You include limits or constraints to really refine the output. So the guardrails of what they have to be, and be specific. Specify the format, the length, the audience, the tone, and the goals. So those are things that you want to keep in mind when you write an effective prompt. Now, oops, something showed up on here. I don't want you to settle. Oh, what happened here? I forgot to erase that. I don't want you to settle for the first output. Keep refining your prompt until you achieve the desired response. And I'm going to tell you that is something that you will need to definitely work on. I know that I'm still refining it, because what you might find works for Gemini doesn't work for ChatGPT or doesn't work for Copilot. You experiment with different approaches to improve the results. And the most important thing is you actually go back and you review AI generated content for accuracy. And that's one thing I've been trying to teach students and teachers. What I love about this is that teachers are really natural at being prompt engineers, because teachers are, did you know that teachers ask over 400 questions a day? Did you know that? So in a lifetime, a lifetime career, that could be over 2 to 3 million questions. So why wouldn't we be good at crafting good questions and being able to write a good prompt engineer? It combines the clarity, because teachers need to be very clear in their thoughts, okay? Curiosity, they explore possibilities and ask open-ended questions, and creativity. They think outside the box to generate innovative responses. If I think about clarity, curiosity, and creativity, I think of a teacher, you know? So, and this is a skill that improves over time with practice. And so the only way to get better at it is to practice at it. Now, when we build prompting, clear prompts yield precise responses. You got to start small and experiment with different tools. So, have you, just give me a thumbs up or not, whether or not, have you experimented beyond just one, like beyond ChatGPT? Have you tried like Gemini, Copilot? Yeah. And even trying those different things, there's a nuance, wouldn't you say, in terms of going from one to the other? Yeah, Maureen gave a thumbs up. So use your existing strengths as an educator, like design prompts with a teaching mindset. Transform how you interact with AI by cultivating that skill. And so I really find that teachers pretty much have a lot of patience and creativity to make that prompting better. Now, one guide I like to use, and I don't know if any of you have seen this before. Have you seen this model before? It talks about a goal. You know, if you're thinking about a framework, you might want to think, does my prompt have these pieces? Am I defining the learning goal or objective? What do you want the AI to help you achieve? Do you understand? Like, can you clarify the context? What background information does the AI need to understand the task? Can you instruct? You know, provide clear, specific instructions. What exactly should the AI do? And are there details? Offer detailed parameters. Are there any constraints or formats or specific examples the AI should follow? And evaluate. You planned for evaluation. How will you assess the effectiveness of the AI's response or output? Now, here's one. It was actually used for an assessment piece, but I want to thanks, Maureen. I'll make sure that I think you'll have access to some of this. If not, I'll put it on a slide. But I like this piece because, you know, we've color coded it. And what I tend to do is I actually use the guide, you know, and when I worked with teachers, and I don't even have them write the prompt yet. I just have them look at, what do you want the AI to help you with? Let's just write it out. What do you want to clarify? So I have them bring this out, okay, to sort of like answer those questions, because sometimes it's that brainstorming, especially early on. They want to just jump in and write that, but they don't know really, like, if you use questions to sort of, so really, what do you want from this prompt? Then after that, we take those questions, and then, okay, now here's your brainstorm. Let's play with it. And let's see, does it have all the pieces that you need? Okay. So that is like one way that you can definitely look at it, and think about how you can use that. So Katie, you've seen this one before? Yeah. Have you used that, or is it something just natural now for you?
I put in the chat, I think if it went in properly, the one that our board uses,
Yeah.
and it's really branded with the acronym. It covers a lot of
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
There were a few tips that I've been picking up along the way that I've been finding really helpful with prompt crafting, depending on what I'm using it for. One of the lines that I put in quite often now is familiarize yourself with dot dot dot. So it could be something. So our board is really a deep learning board. So it could be, familiarize yourself with the works of, Michael Fullan. And I, enjoying going on deep learning. So sometimes that will really help, you know,
Nice.
get it. The other thing is I'll ask it to ask me questions
Yes.
to go deeper. I really love that. Sometimes I'll give it a role. If
Mhm.
it's not familiarize yourself, it's something like, we do a lot of traveling as a family. So I'll say, act as an expert travel,
Yeah.
like trip planner. Um, and, ask me more questions so I can go deeper on my trip. So that's really good if it'll actually ask me questions to
Yep.
get me to think more about the context. So those are, and the last one I heard, it was on a webinar, I think it was last week or the week before. And one of the tips that the presenter gave was, he said, don't, don't just say, give me 3. He said, give me 30
Mhm.
examples, because he said that way you're cutting down some of the time that you're doing when you're doing the prompt engineering, because if you ask it for more, you're likely to get at least a few of what you were really aiming for. So he said sometimes that can be a good time hack, and I thought that was a cool idea. I haven't tried that one
Absolutely.
out yet, but I'm going to.
I love that. And I actually like it when you ask for 30 versus 3, because of the fact that when you ask it to add more, I sometimes find it changes it. It changes the output. It's not in the same line. I'm like, you knew what I was talking about before, but now all of a sudden I asked 5 more and it's not the same. So
Yeah, it seems like it gets confused. And
yeah,
sometimes I'll just take my original prompt
yes,
and I'll go back and I'll add all the other things I should have mentioned the first time around, and I'll just regenerate it, because it really, like, especially when we're, like I said, we use it a lot in our personal life for trip planning, and it gets really confused once you correct it on some variables, things like that. So I'll just go in and put a much better prompt in after I've been messing around with it. But for sure, the
absolutely.
iteration is really
Well,
important.
you're living what I just told you. Don't settle
Yeah.
for the first one, you know. And the other piece I want to point out, I don't know if you heard this in the last one you were in, you can ask for the questions, but also to say, ask each question one at a time.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't
okay.
have that for these prompts. For my next one, I'm gonna do some of those other things. That's next week, but I'm gonna give you a sneak peek. You put down like the same things, but um, you actually say to the final piece, ask each question one at a time, or ask me any question related to this until you have enough information to do, whether it's to make the lesson. So it it's my thought partner. Okay. So try that one question at a time. It becomes, and then use that information to probe even deeper. Okay. So let's get moving. And again, thank you for just Katie and anyone else and Maureen and Julie, just for sharing your thinking and some of your experiences, or even just saying, I really love this, you know? So when we talk about the intersection of generative AI and the humanities, like I said, when I took this topic, it's a huge topic. So the first one is we're going to focus on is more of the disciplinary literacy. And I did some other work in the past where this can go in so many directions. So I'm really gonna, since I have some 3s and 4s here, and even 2.5s, I think we can generate some ideas together. So when we think about humanities, it can actually go through the through line of history, literature, languages, and the arts. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, what could I use that would be a through line for some of these pieces? So next week's webinar is going to be more of like some more like the interactive pieces that I'm going to put into it. What I'm going to focus on here, I broke it down into 2 things. And when I think about it, using AI for text analysis, and for my 3s and 4s, for my folks that are more of the experience, this might be very simplistic for you. But like I said, we have an audience of people that may have never even tried AI, okay? So one way that you can use AI for text analysis is just summarizing or analyzing short text, okay? Or making it so you can summarize it and it develops questions. And so that's for AI for interactive experiences. Now, for the experience, which are all of you, you can create a more deeper analysis of the text. Have any of you tried AI for text analysis in your work or what you've done? Feel free. How have you used it? Katie, you can unmute. Maureen and Julie, you can put it in the chat. I know, how have you used that?
So I was putting in the chat, we've been using Notebook LM and doing a lot of experimenting with that with my board. So we did a little trick where we downloaded, and it was great because it wasn't just text analysis, it was also putting in videos and putting in,
Nice.
I'm just going to turn my camera off because my husband's helping me with something because my second monitor isn't working. So we put in all of these different pieces of information and data. And what I loved about Notebook LM is it will create a chatbot for you where you
Nice.
can go in and you can ask, you can put a limited amount of pieces of data, and then you can use it as like to ask questions of it to make sure that you understand something that's really complex. So I
Nice.
think that's crazy. And the other piece with Notebook LM that it'll actually do as well is it will create a podcast based on what you've downloaded, and it comes out as two speakers, like they're really just having a little chat about whatever topic it is. And it'll
Oh,
actually
yeah.
generate that within like about 7 minutes. It's actually a little bit scary.
It
Can,
is,
but
yeah. Well, I heard that was happening. I was going to look into it. I haven't, but that is amazing,
yeah.
and to be able to have that experience.
So it's
Yeah.
an incredible repository. And the other piece I really like about it is that because you can select the different pieces of data that you're putting into it,
Mm-hmm.
you're creating a little bit more of a controlled environment. And I know some of the teachers that I've been working with are working on their masters,
Right.
and they found it as an educator doing lessons themselves as a student that this is incredible. I've heard of grade 12 students also setting up their own like study system that way too, because they
Yeah.
can ask it questions. So it's
Yes.
really functional, and right now it's free, which is pretty awesome.
I know. That's why you got to play around with it. But you could also do that with the chat GPT, like I mentioned to you. Ask
Yeah.
me questions to do that. So even the prompt, so it's amazing that all these different platforms are creating that. And so it's not just one. That's what I love about it, that you can, instead of like, there's a lot of different programs, but you can actually use prompt engineering to help you. So the other pieces is like diversifying multimedia learning and creating questions. We talked about using questions. We talked about, I mentioned like you role playing. You said as a travel agent, creating that role playing. You are and you're creating scenarios for that. So I think we're kind of like moving through this. What are some other I saw Copilot, I saw Brisk. Is there anything that your favorite go-to AI tool to support you in the humanities subjects? These are some that I pulled out, but remember humanities covers a lot. So one thing that I see a lot of teachers use are Canva, you know, School AI. Thank you, Katie. And then I don't know, Grammarly, that's something that's been used a lot, but it's funny because I've actually had teachers use Grammarly with students to say, to have them ask them, is it really their voice? Again, I really appreciate when teachers teach students to be critical thinkers about AI. Magic School, I've seen that a lot. Perplexity, thanks, Katie. And then slides, I think that's serving almost the same type of piece. Have you tried Slides AI? It actually creates a slide deck for you. Yes, think about it in your presentations. Voyant, I've heard about, and then I played around with it, and I'm like looking at it. This is really about, it's a web-based text analysis tool that actually lets you input text and URLs and takes the analytical data and then word frequency and trends and creates like word clouds and like charts and all that. So that's something to think about, especially if there's so much information, you want to get the big ideas from that. Okay. Anything else? Oh, we have quiz. Thanks, Katie. Those are some, I forgot about those. I should add that, So let me see. I'm going to keep moving on. Now, I'm going to add, we have like 10 minutes left, but I'm just going to add these to you. You are my 3s and 4s and 3.5s. So some of this will be, I'm going to actually ask you, because you are at this place, to go further and see how you can use what you know. And maybe Katie and Maureen and Julie, you might want to consider and think about, how can I have, Maureen's like, yay. How can I have change the prompt? I actually am going to challenge all of you to even take the experience prompts I'm going to share with you. And I want you to push it even further and see what you can do with that. So this is the prompt challenge for like using AI for text analysis. Because this is the first of my 3 webinars that I'm doing, doesn't have all the bells and whistles that I kind of gave you a sneak peek, Katie, for some of that. But it was just for keeping in mind, like, how can I just use the simple task of text analysis? This is a very simplistic prompt. I felt like, I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? I would actually give this to teachers and say, how can you create more specific guidelines, formats, and all that? But I don't know about you. Sometimes I like to start simple and add, because Katie, have you or Maureen or Julie ever created a prompt that was so complex that when it came out, you were like, what do I take away? Versus like, sometimes I'll start with simple and I'm like, okay, what's missing? And I'll go back and I'll add to it. Oops. So, I forgot to close this off. Excuse me. So that's one. And then this is for text analysis. The other one is really about interactive experiences. Now, I did this several weeks ago. Now that I'm looking at it, because this is how I am, I would completely change it. And I might, but part of it is because I would actually give it a role. Or if it's a generating discussion questions, I would do that one piece, Katie, where generate some questions, but ask me one at a time. But that's for the newbies. Sometimes our newbies just need the questions asked. Sometimes simplistic enough. And then experience role playing and historical figure. The other webinar that I'm going to be doing, and I think there's 2 more. One is really taking that role of, and I was trying to do it with Canadian history with one and they're having this conversation and you're the other person, and they take on the role of that character and you have to take on the role of that other historical figure. So that's just a little preview for anything in the future, but I just wanted to share that with you. These are simple versions because what I like is when I used to make them so complex, and then I had maybe you, Katie, you're on one platform, and then I have someone on Copilot, when it became too complex that it didn't land well in those different pieces. And so I kind of make it like some simple enough so you can add more to it. Right. And then this one is multimedia learning. Have you used, any of you use AI for multimedia learning at all? To create, like, give you ideas for how to bring all the pieces with multimedia? Yeah, Maureen, pictures, yep. I'm going to talk about that next week, using visual imagery. So these are simple, but again, like this is what I kind of go with when I have people using ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and all that, because you can build on that. Okay. Now, I know we're cut on time, and so because I have 3s and 4s here, if you click on this, that should open up to those slides. And I want you to play around with that. I have a feeling that, like I said, I have the gifted and talented group. You are going to fly with this and make it your own. But this is just for you to play around with. What I value about this is not so much the output that it comes from this. You might say, why? Because that's really important. It is. But what I also want, thank you, Katie. But what I also want you to think about, and I think someone mentioned this, is the process. I think there's more value in you trying a prompt and it doesn't work out to what you want, and you have to critically think, what do I need? How many of you would believe that, say that's true? Because I found that when I've become a better prompt writer because of the prompts that didn't work. And I would ask myself, what would I need to satisfy? What do I have to change in my input to have the output that I want? Okay. And so 100%, yeah, absolutely, Maureen. And so that's why that whole idea of practicing is really important. Now, I gave you access to that so you can play around with it and see how that fits. But like I said, as you practice, you're going to make it better. I'm going to challenge you, Katie, Maureen, Julie, for one of those pieces. I think it's the question one, to say, generate the questions, but ask it one at a time for me, And that's a flip. That's what we call it when we flip it. We flip the question. So I'm not asking the question, but actually, yes, absolutely, Maureen. But actually, I'm asking AI to be a thought partner to generate those questions for me. And so that's something I want you to keep in mind. What I love about this is that when I give the prompts, because one time I gave prompts that were really long and there wasn't any space for the teachers to improve on it. Like there was they didn't know where to start. So like you said, Maureen, we start simple right here, and then we go from there and we build on it. How are we doing? Katie, I can tell you about your other screen now. And thank you for all of you for like sharing. I appreciate that. So I'm gonna let you, I know we have around 5 minutes, but I think I really value like Katie and Maureen and Julie, the contributions that you've shared and just talking about it. And Katie, thank you for that document, because I think that's something that could definitely help other people out here. So, oh, here's a message. Always learning. I love that hashtag. So if we had more time, I'd say, what prompt challenge did you try? How well the output matched your expectations? I love it because teachers will say to me, it didn't. And the next question is, what did you do about it? What did you do so you can meet your expectations? Because really that's what you want to teach students eventually someday. if it doesn't meet your expectations, what can you do? What can you critically do in your thinking to make it better? Okay, Katie, I can tell you're doing a lot of thinking right now.
One of the things that I just added to the prompt was use student-friendly language. Uh,
Yes, I love that.
one with the role playing. I also pared it down a bit. I asked for, I put in the specifics of the American Civil War, and I said include one figure from the North, one figure from the South for the debate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, yeah, so those were a few of the little tweaks that I did.
That's awesome. And Katie, that's one suggestion as you work with younger teachers and they're going through this, give them something that is that's not so complex, that might meet that in terms of a prompt, and let them tell you what they did to make it better. Because there's more power to that from learning from how to make it better and what it didn't, because as new teachers, they're going to be experiencing a lot of different experiences and have needs for their students. Keep it simple, because then they can say, okay, it didn't meet your need. What do you need? I need to add it that it's the context of this particular student without giving the name, you know.
And I
Oh,
think the other piece too, that's part of that iterative piece, is always bringing that professional piece as a teacher, because we know that AI will hallucinate, and it will get things wrong. And sometimes if you correct it, it will just agree with you and say, oh, okay. And, and
yeah,
sometimes when you ask it to regenerate, it'll be fine. But
yeah,
having that eye is so important. I was actually really surprised with what popped out with the Civil War one, because I've seen a lot of bias as well, especially when
yes,
you're generating images, where,
yes.
I've create a picture of a university professor, and it's all white males with long white beards, and there's no diversity. I'm actually quite impressed that I was using Gemini as my tool, and aside from the North that they picked to be the speaker was Frederick Douglass. So that
Oh,
makes me happy
wow.
to see that, as opposed to
Yes.
just
It would be
another white
interesting if
man.
you tried different, like ChatGPT or Copilot with the same prompt. I like
Yeah,
doing to see.
that would be really interesting,
Because
actually.
then I kind of see where the biases land.
Yeah.
Julie, thank you. I thank you, Julie, and thank you, Maureen. And if whatever your biggest takeaways are, I think you've been sharing along the way. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you're actually taking, and we're looking not only at the output of ChatGPT or the prompt engineering, but having these professional conversations. I heard Katie's voice, but I know that Julie and Maureen, you've been involved. And so I really appreciate that. I will never let a teacher be late for dinner or any of those things, or going to bed, because it's the hour. And I really appreciate all of you. You've done an amazing job. I'm going to be doing this next week. I think it's on Wednesday. I have to double check. Hopefully I get to see you again and throw out some more secrets that way. So take care, friends. Bye, Julie. Bye, Katie. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye, friends. Okay. Stop recording. Mhm, mhm.